You know, President Obama used two Bibles at his swearing in at the inauguration. One was Lincoln's, the other one was Martin Luther King Jr.'s. And apparently Cornell West did not love that idea. On Thursday the 17th, he was on a panel led by Tavis Smiley. There were many people on the panel, including Newt Gingrich. And when they got to the topic of King's Bible, Brother Cornell let her go.
When I got the news that my dear brother Barack Obama, President Obama, was going to put his precious hand on Martin Luther King Jr.'s Bible, I got upset. And I got upset because you don't play with Martin Luther King Jr. and you don't play with his people. And by his people, what I mean is people of good conscience, fundamentally committed to peace and truth and justice, and especially the black tradition that produced him.
You know, Cornell West used the word brother a lot because you're supposed to love your opponents, enemies, etc. And the president's not his enemy, but he will say Brother Romney as well. But you get the sense that maybe he's not quite feeling the word brother. Okay, because he's just getting started. Here we go.
You don't use his prophetic fire as just a moment in a presidential pageantry without understanding the challenge that he presents to all of those in power, no matter what color they are. So the righteous indignation of a Martin Luther King Jr. becomes a moment in political calculation, and that makes my blood boil.
Boil. Okay, so you think, well, his blood has boiled. No, no, no. It's about to boil.
All of those in power who refuse to follow decent policies. So I say to myself, Brother Martin Luther King Jr., what would you say about the new Jim Crow? What would you say about the prison-industrial complex? What would you say about the invisibility of so many of our prisoners? So many of our incarcerated, especially when 62% of them are there for soft drugs, but not one executive of a Wall Street bank gone to jail. Not one. Martin doesn't like that. Not one wiretapper. Not one torture under the Bush administration.
It's impossible not to enjoy it when he gets rolling. Now, you might not agree with it, but it's fun to watch. Not one! Not one! And by the way, of course, he's right on the facts. No question about that either. One more.
What'd you say about the drones being dropped on our precious brothers and sisters in Pakistan and Somalia and Yemen? Those are war crimes, just like war crimes in Vietnam. Martin Luther King Jr., what would you say? My voice hollers out, then don't tame it. With your hand on his Bible, allow his prophetic voice to be heard.
All right, now those are strong words. Now, there are other critics who agree. They say U.S. government is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. Now, strong words, strong words. Continuing, to pursue endless war is to worship the God of hate and bow before the altar of retaliation. Wow, those are very liberal, very strong words. Unacceptable, I'm sure, in today's Washington. One more for you guys. How can they trust us now, referring to our enemies? We charge them with violence while we pour every new weapon of death into their land. Surely we must understand their feelings, even if we do not condone their actions. Wow. Okay. Now, those are some significant criticisms of the president, and obviously way outside the mainstream. Try to understand our enemies? You care about their feelings? No. Complaining about bombing them. No, you don't understand. They're the enemy. They're the bad guys. So who said those last three quotes? You got it by now? Martin Luther King Jr. Now, of course, he was talking about Vietnam. What do you think? Would we have agreed with drone strikes where we do signal strikes? We don't even know who we're hitting. The double taps where we kill first responders coming in to rescue the people who've been bombed in the first place, where we even kill U.S. citizens without a trial if they're abroad. So is Cornell West right that Martin Luther King would have been upset about that? There is no question about that. Let me give you more quotes from King. We are called to speak for the weak, for the voiceless, for victims of our nation, and for those it calls enemy. Can you imagine saying that we have to speak for the enemy and the victims of our violence? Because we need to listen to them so that we can understand, so that we can get to peace. Okay? So we're not doing it for them. We're doing it for our own soul. That's what Martin Luther King often talked about. He's got more. He said, a nation that continues year after year to spend money on military defense, more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift, is approaching spiritual doom. You want to talk about strong words? What would Martin Luther King Jr. have said? Listen to what he already said. Now, of course, they bury all that. They just say, oh, don't worry about the color of anybody's skin, content of their character. Yeah, well, of course, we're all Martin Luther King fans. Absolutely. Glenn Beck pretends to be a Martin Luther King fan. Would he agree with these comments? Martin Luther King wasn't just about civil rights, although he did heroic work there. He was also about anti-militarism. He was in favor of actually trying to fight poverty. And along those lines, let me give you one last quote. King said, there are certain things in our nation and in the world which I am proud to be maladjusted, and which I hope all men of goodwill will be maladjusted to. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few. Now that's a progressive. So I think Brother Cornell West might be onto something.
It's exactly, but what happens when I think, at least from Cornell West's point of view, when it gets overlooked is when, because he said crazy things before, and I completely agree with him on this one. If you're going to swear on the Bible, you can't act like you embody the same things that the guy that you're swearing on his Bible embody. It just doesn't match up. So you're making a showcase of this very important man who did very important things and believed in very important things that you don't seem to believe in. So don't make it seem like you believe in what he believes in, because you're bastardizing it. How can you disagree?
You know, it's tough to argue. It really is. You know, Max Blumenthal had a great line today. Martin Luther King, in that same place, of course, that President Obama gave the speech today, had his speech, of course, which was, I have a dream. Obama's speech could be, I have a drone. And if you think Martin Luther King would have been in favor of signature strikes and double taps where you kill the people trying to rescue people who've already been hit by a drone and killing U.S. citizens without a trial abroad, well, then you don't know Dr. King at all.